Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So, having experienced both the AK 47, or the civilianized versions of them, and I can honestly say the real deal, and experiencing the AR 15 and the M16, I don't understand why modern variants of the AKs are now trying to intrude into the AR space. And what I mean is, if you check out Zastava's new AK that they're going to try to bring to the United States, it's one that the the Slovenians have already adopted as their military rifle. And it has a lot of features that, like a folding stock. An actual folding stock, unlike what a traditional AR-15 can do, that can fire. I don't know what utility there is in that. Having had AKs or actually having AKs with folding stocks, let's put it that way. I don't see the utility in it because I don't fire them that way. I guess if you're using it for suppressive fire, if you've been surprised and you've stored the weapon, sort of, that makes sense. But I get the modularity of wanting to be able to put a flashlight on it or a forward grip. I do think it's hilarious. You see the memes going around where they're showing conversations between a guy and he's on the cell phone and he's saying reverse dong, forward dong, and he's trying to explain to his wife in the next pane what he means. And what he means, for those of you not in the AK know, you can have a handguard that has a grip kind of carved out of the wood. This is traditionally known in the AK world as the dong grip. Okay, and some of them face forward and some of them face backwards, and it usually is how you hold the weapon for some people. Traditional Russian will teach you to hold the weapon back where the magazine well is and hold the magazine. So, what I would suggest is, if you're going to do AK, do AK. If you're going to do AR, do AR. If you want modularity, the AK is not for you. If you want a rifle that you're going to set up once and you're done, that can be an AK. If you look at the newest supposed XM5 or the M5 that has been adopted, it is a blend of the two designs. Mixed in with the SKS. If you really want to get technical nowadays, you take the HK416, what it did, take it to the bank, add some SIG funk to it, and now that's what you got for the XM5. But what they've shown is that at full auto, when you chop down a barrel or you cut down a barrel to make it handier in like tighter spaces, it messes up the cyclic rate on direct impingement guns. And long stroke gas pistons adapt okay to that, but then they don't silence very well because, pistons clap, and you also end up with a lot of gas blowback when you suppress a weapon like that. So, to cut the middle ground, they took the SKS, or the HK416 idea, of the short stroke gas piston. So if you don't know what that is, it's a piston that actually gets gas fed to it, but instead of having the piston recoil back the entire length of the bolt carrier group to cycle the gun, it just impinges that gas onto a piston surface area that is a small rod that comes out of the bolt face. And that strikes, or not the bolt face, out of where the receiver is, and where the star receiver would be in an AR-15. It comes out right there, strikes the face or the bolt carrier group, a surface on the bolt carrier group, and cycles the gun. Now, why they do this is because it's cleaner, less back pressure, and handles the cyclical issues for rifles, especially when you're looking at something like the 6.8 by 51 or 277 Fury. That's going to have a lot of gas, especially in that 80,000 psi round that they're using for armor piercing. So it shows that East and West, we come to different solutions for the same problem. And the best solution is a mix of the two, if you think about it. There are features that once we've designed in the West, the East adopts. Case in point, if you look at the AK-12 now, they have farther back aperture rear sights. They have places to attach lights, lasers, foregrips now. They also retain the Eastern safety thing, the slide safety. But originally, the AK-12 had a option for both types of safeties, like the Galil. Now, why is that? It's when you run a gun for a while and you train with one that you actually get to see that Western ergonomics make a lot of sense. And it's only that if you put it in the guise of Eastern ideology where they were thinking about this going into a conscript's hands. And seeing how the Russians are prosecuting a war in Ukraine right now, they obviously don't train as much as we always thought they did with the AK, even in grade schools, because they're showing up not knowing how to use the weapon. Where I'm pretty sure a lot of Americans know how to use one, whether they had one or have ever shot one or not, because of what we've seen in movies, what we've seen in media, how the world works. So I think it's really interesting that as we progress, and as if you've ever watched the movie The Last Samurai, there's a point that they put on the blade that they give to Tom Cruise's character that says, "The warrior that blends both sides," or both styles, the old versus the new. What's really funny about that is the AR and the AK were designed around the same time, within 10 years. So it shows that culture matters. Western culture drove a design one way. Eastern culture drove a design another way. In the end, they do the same thing. I still think of them as a tank or a tractor versus a jet fighter or an aircraft carrier. And I say that just because of complexity and design and engineering. I think that the world is in a weird place, guys and girls. I put my podcast out, and it echoes a lot of sentiment throughout what I've seen in the world. Yesterday's podcast specifically, where I was saying, it sucks to see a community that is always so marginalized, where we have a definitive solution that these people will reject because it goes against the narratives that their political ideology espouses. And you can only take so many casualties before you fight back. And that's where I think we are now. We've coddled enough of American culture that we've made a lot of unwell individuals, or enabled a lot of unwell individuals to do a lot of bad things. The shooting that happened over the weekend that I talked about, why it affects me a little bit, is one, I hate mass shootings because of what's happened to me in the past. Two, I have some friends that have recently come out, and this is jarring them because this is their community. Now, I'm straight as an arrow, I guess is how you could put it. I just suck at dating. But in general, what I notice is that the 2A never really cared. There's a group called Pink Pistols, and I said this stuff last night. But it kind of bothers me to think that I've seen some people straight up say, well, good, these guys were going to host a drag show the next day. Okay, I understand your problem. I understand what I've said too about grooming kids. But this is not how we fight it. Violence begets violence. And what I'm concerned about is that any stupid action right now is just going to enable the powers that be right now to come down even harder on the 2A. Every time one of these tragic events happens, someone rallies support to try to push a gun ban. And for once, can we just acknowledge that people died? That sucks. And before we jump to any conclusions, first, mourn them. Second, why don't we try a different solution? Because the one that always keeps coming up is ban them. We haven't tried the arm them thing. We haven't tried the train and enable people. We haven't tried the self-ownership thing. But I think it's beyond time. And I would have thought that COVID would have woke up a lot of people to that harsh reality that ultimately you're responsible for yourself, your family, your inner circle. Act accordingly. Like, share, subscribe. Have a happy, happy Thanksgiving. I don't know that there'll be an episode for Thanksgiving Day, but if it gets slow, maybe I'll post one up. Be great.